Historical highlights of the Hill, Dogtown, and more with Joe DeGregorio next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. We've got a fun and interesting show for you today. We're going to talk about some of the fun facts and historical highlights of a few of St. Louis's favorite neighborhoods, like the Hill, Dutchtown, Bevo Mill, as well as Dogtown. And I'm joined by Joe DeGregorio, who I like to call a social historian, lifelong St. Louisan, right?
Yes.
And now someone who leads tours, but this hasn't been what you've always done, is that right?
No, actually, I was a federal agent in the area of protecting classified information for about 30 years, and this is a totally different gig, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
How did it come about that you became this official person to go to, especially for tours of the Hill, your neighborhood?
Of course. It was very easy for me to segue from my father, who did the tours for 25 years after he retired from the post office, and then I retired as a federal agent. I thought, what do I do with the rest of my life? Dad said, try the tours. I go, okay. And it was magic from after that.
And so you're a native of the Hill. You grew up there, right?
Yes, I grew up on the western side of the Hill, yes. And I'm the first of 7 kids. And thank you, Mom. And have enjoyed every time when I've come back. My previous life took me all over the world, all over the country. But I've always seen the Hill as my neighborhood and the church as my church.
Got it. And you probably know a lot of things that most of us don't know about the neighborhood, which is why you're here today.
Okay. Yes,
Well, let's talk about it. We've got some photos just to throw up. So, I mean, when you do your tours, people can contact you. Are they walking tours? You starting the tours?
They're a little bit of everything. One thing I've learned over the last 11 years since I've done the tour is flexibility. Whatever your visitor group requires. For example, I did one today, and it was half walking and half caravanning.
Got it.
Just depends on what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Got it. Got it.
And so that's something that has been driven by experiences.
Yes. Well, with the Hill, everybody knows we're looking at one of the banners of the Hill, that it's historically an Italian-American neighborhood. So start us off here. I mean, this is the famous sculpture, the Italian immigrant sculpture, statue, I should say, that stands in front of St. Ambrose Church.
Sculpture is correct. It's done by the architect Rudy Turini, and it was dedicated in 1973, and does depict how the immigrants looked, in my opinion, after they came after World War I. Before that, it was mostly just the men coming and then getting wives from the old country as they got prospered with their jobs. And here, coming after World War I, you see one suitcase, the child, and the 2 immigrants coming for a new world, but coming into the old world because it was already established in that neighborhood.
So in the Hill with Italian immigration, which waves do you see? You talked about pre-World War I and then after World War II?
Yes, there were several waves, the first being right after the Civil War in the United States. Then coming to St. Louis in larger numbers around 1885 downtown, mostly Sicilians, and then 1890 in the area we now call the Hill. But these Italians coming on the Hill initially were from northern Italy, the region of Lombardy, way north, which is atypical of most Italian neighborhoods in the United States, which are populated primarily by southern Italians.
Yes, and I think you had mentioned to me before when we spoke that your family's from Sicily?
Sicily, correct. Sicily. And so eventually Sicilians came to populate the neighborhood, where the ratio became about 2/3 Lombards and 1/3 Sicilians. And we did not get along.
Really?
We mirrored actually the same situation that took place in Italy, where the northern Italians were prejudicial against the southern Italians. But that all quickly dissipated because this is America.
Right. No, that's good. That's good to hear. And you mentioned St. Ambrose on the Hill.
Yes.
That's just sort of the center of the neighborhood.
St. Ambrose does remain the cultural, religious, and social center of this neighborhood. The church itself, which is Northern Italian in design, was finished in 1926 at a cost of $850,000. And was built within 4.5 years. Yes,
wow,
and the interior of the church is Romanesque with its arches, basilica-style ceiling, and the baldacchino dome-style altar.
So do you worship at this church? Is that correct?
Yes, I do. Yes,
and is it sort of the same families, everyone in the neighborhood, like generation after generation?
Well, in some cases, yes, but in other cases, it's changing. The demographics of the hill are changing as the World War II generation is now quickly passing. We have a lot of, let's call, non-Italians moving into the neighborhood, which is wonderful. I would say roughly about 50-55% of the neighbors on the hill are Italian descent. The others are from everywhere else.
And so when we talk about the hill, obviously people know the foods and the restaurants. That's kind of known, I think, nationally. When people come to St. Louis, they say, oh, I want to go to the hill, I want to go to the restaurant. But also two celebrities, sports celebrities, if you will, who've come from the neighborhood.
Oh my goodness. Of course, Yogi Berra, Joe DeGregorio. Yogi Berra, who passed away about a year ago now, almost exactly a year ago, was the icon of the hill. Moved out of the hill in 1948. Yogi was not his real nickname on the hill. It was Lottie.
Lottie?
His mother gave him the birth name of Lawrence, Peter Berra, could not pronounce it in English, so she called him Lottie, and everybody in the neighborhood called him Lottie. That's his real nickname growing up here.
So when did Yogi come?
Yogi came later when somebody was watching him in a dugout early in his baseball career, and he was kind of sitting like a yoga, like this sort of, and say, hey, that's a Yogi, we're going to call you Yogi. And that's how it went, and the sports writers ran with it, and it stuck.
Yeah, and it's stuck, and that's however, and everyone knows him. And we have Berra Park. We've got an image of
Berra
that
Park,
too.
yes.
So is this a stop on your tour?
Not named after Yogi Berra.
Well, maybe it's not a stop on
city production, right? So city production. It's named after one of the first Italian-American aldermen and eventually treasurer of the hill, Midge Berra. Midge Berra.
Really?
And that was his nickname, Midge, because he was little when he was growing up, and they called him Midget, but Midge for short, then he got real big. But it's named after Midge Berra, the first Italian-American politician from the hill.
Well, I told you today would be filled with a lot of fun facts, things that I certainly don't know. But a lot of events are held, I feel, when there's events on the hill.
Oh, yes. We have a lot of church events, as you would expect, but a lot of other traditional events, which we just had the first week in September, the Giro di Montagna, which is the bike race of the hill, which has grown in stature in its last 28 years to be populated now by a lot of professional bike riders. So it's become a place to go for professional bike riders to gain those points in their repertoire.
Got it. And you mentioned the other baseball player that is from
Joe
St. Louis.
DeGregorio, of course. Joe once said to a lot of people, how would you feel if you became a professional baseball player from your block and you ended up being the second best player on the block? He called Yogi, Joe did, the sewer guy, because when they were kids playing on the street there, Yogi was the guy designated to go down to the sewer. Joe DeGregorio, of course, Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Baseball announcer, fantastic man, great philanthropist, and also, like Yogi, in the Hall of Fame as well. But one other person lived on that block for 5 years in the 50s. Hall of Fame baseball announcer Jack Buck. Lived in my Uncle John Ferrara's house at the end of the block, on the eastern end of the block. It's the only block in America, which we do call Hall of Fame Place, that was at one time or other, 3 baseball Hall of Famers lived. Wow. It's the only place in America that can claim that.
Wow. No, that is really, that's fascinating, really interesting. And so you, obviously that's part of when you do a tour, you just do the stop along the block.
Yes.
That might be the main reason people are doing it.
And of course, Joe just passed earlier this year as well.
We're going to move along to the Bocce Club. Bocce ball?
Bocce ball. Now, young lady, we say bocce here in St. Louis. See, bocce.
Is that like a...
No, bocce means kiss in Italian, and we can't do this on St. Louis TV, okay? So.
And we can't have a kissing club, can we?
No. But bocce is the way a lot of folks in America say bocce, which is understandable, but the Italians pronounce it bocce. The Italians didn't invent it, though.
That sounds so much better.
They didn't invent it. It was invented by the Egyptians 7,000 years ago, because they had an advanced civilization, a lot of leisure time, and so they made up this game which is now called bocce. The Roman soldiers picked up on it and brought it to Europe.
So how long has the club been around?
The Italian American Bocce Club, which is indoor, a private club, officially since 1975, and their new digs on the hill since 1993.
Okay.
They have about 370 members. Every 5 years, they host the national tournament.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And of course, Milo's on the Hill is a place for everybody else to go play bocce.
Got it. I want to throw up a picture of a market that bears the same last name, with the exception of a different spelling of yours. So your last name, DeGregorio.
With an E.
But this is still pronounced the same for the market?
DeGregorio, yes. My grandfather, Joseph DeGregorio, who I'm named after, was getting his citizenship. Judge called him up, Mr. DeGregorio, please come up. And he said, being a very proud man, sir, you pronounce it DeGregorio. Well, why didn't you spell it that way? Okay, so he changed it right there to D-E. So those are the DIs who came in the early 1950s. Very hardworking, very successful family. We're very proud of them.
Yes, and those are your cousins, and we're looking
Yes.
at, so the market, what does the market sell? These are sort of authentic.
What don't they sell?
That's a
You
good way
name
of looking
something
at it.
Italian, and they've got it.
Okay.
They have it. You know, from salami, cheeses, to pizzas, to sauces, to olive oil, it's all there.
And so I imagine this is a stop that people can make as well on the tour.
I call it a
People go there,
fix. I call it a fix, yes.
get to go, see some family.
Yeah, of course, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
very enjoyable.
And then the last image that we have, this is something that I pulled that is of VJ Day, the Victory over Japan Day back in 1945, specifically of the Hill. And I guess when you alluded to the point, too, of just what it was, sort of the Americanization, if you will, just being
Yes.
from Italy and then being so quickly sort of caught up into becoming an American.
Baseball, soccer,
Yes.
Americanisms,
How is
speaking
that?
English at the homes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean,
uh-huh.
talk about that, sort of
Yeah,
growing up on the Hill.
It's
and
something
just,
that was a transformation typical of many other ethnic neighborhoods from Europe, where they still spoke the old language at home at times, but very gradually and then eventually totally speaking nothing but English in the neighborhood. And it is a fact, and I saw this on a DVD about Italian neighborhoods in America, that it was the Italian neighborhoods percentage-wise sent more men into the military in World War II than any other ethnic neighborhood in the country to show our patriotism. My father, for example, was a Marine and yet ending up in Iwo Jima. On that particular day where you saw the picture, he was right in the middle of that.
really?
Yeah, because he got discharged early and was right in the middle of the celebrations. Yes.
Well, you have so much information. We've got Joe's information for you on the screen. If you want to do a neighborhood tour or just call him up to get some
Give me a call.
historical facts,
That's
you
no
can.
problem.
Right. Give him a call at 314-602-3359 or email him with the email address on the screen. So we've covered the Hill, but we're now going to talk about, after this break, actually, Dogtown, as well as the Bosnian experience. So please stay with us after this quick break.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
G-morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey. Text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. LUV, love you. JK. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back.
Are you with your friends? That's lame.
We're in a huge fight right now. XO.
What'd you dream about?
Something I
Me?
did. Are you on your way to the
I'm
mall?
lonely.
Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. We've been talking to Joe DeGregorio about some of the historic highlights and fun facts of some of St. Louis's favorite neighborhoods, like the Hill. Now we're going to move into Dogtown, which is another favorite neighborhood of folks because it's not too far from the park. There's a lot of bars.
Yes.
Dogtown. People always, when they come from out of town, ask me, how is some neighborhood named Dogtown? What's the story behind
Dogtown.
that?
You said a lot of bars, huh? So you know Dogtown. Very good. I'm impressed. Yeah, Dogtown, contrary to popular belief and local urban legend, actually got its name based on the clay mining that went there. And you have someone doing surface clay mining, and they're doing it with a pick and a shovel. And they're going backwards the same way a dog would dig dirt.
Oh, right.
And they were called doggies. And they called the neighborhood they lived in Dogtown.
Right.
And this was discovered by none other than Bob Corbett, a historian and, of the neighborhood and former president of the Historical Society.
Okay.
There.
Well, we've got some photos we're going to throw up of a lot of people, again, like with the architecture, the apartment buildings, people live down there. A lot of young people live down there.
They do now. Yes, they do now. Quite a few people, have, just like the Hill, are moving and have moved into the neighborhood and rejuvenated it.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yes, and this is what would then historically be known as sort of the Irish neighborhood of St. Louis, or is it more just because the parade is held here?
Which you're familiar with, of course. Actually, to be honest, the neighborhood was never majority Irish.
Really?
Never. But what gave it its Irish culture is that the church, St. James the Greater, was always, the priests were always, until the early 1950s, were always directly from Ireland.
Okay.
So they conveyed to the Polish, Italian, Czechoslovakian, and Irish folks Irish culture. And that's how it became more of an Irish culture.
Yes.
Neighborhood to this day.
Yes.
Remains that way.
Yeah,
and that's why
Interesting.
it became that.
So
Yes.
not necessarily in terms of residents then, but
Not
just really
in
because of the
case
church.
of majority population, no.
Got it. And so we've got, this is an old historic photo, and then we also have an image of the, well, these are just more from the neighborhood. There's
More of your favorite
Felix's.
bars, yes. Okay.
You know, out of all the things we could have covered. But you mentioned for St. James, the Greater Catholic Church. And
Yes.
then also we talked about the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which we do have a photo of. And this is the one specific, the Ancient Order of
Hibernians.
Hibernian.
Correct, yes. They are very strict and very traditional in their traditions of Irish customs, And I've met quite a few, and they're very happy that I do the tours of the neighborhood to kind of keep those customs alive, if you will. Yes.
You're teasing me about the bars, but there is one that you do specifically stop at that you wanted
of course.
to mention.
Seamus McDaniel's, owned by Italians.
Is it?
Venicasas, yes, the Venicasas. But it's a wonderful Irish pub that serves American and Irish food. Great hamburgers, great Reubens, and that. And now they just told me this month that they're opening a grand opening in its last Saturday of a Irish gift store called Leona, but they're going to call it Seamus's Leona. And they're going to have all kinds of authentic Irish craft there.
Okay.
You know, the beautiful sweaters and the
yeah.
hats and everything else. So it'd be a nice stop after Seamus,
Yes.
assuming you're sober. Yeah, okay.
And we do have photos of Turtle Playground. Now, this is a favorite for folks who are visiting the zoo
Yes.
and they cross
Yes, it is.
over
Yes.
the bridge. And then for anybody with, young children, is there anything? Is this included in the tour? Is this sort of considered
They do see it. They do see it. I mentioned it briefly, and it is part of the zoo area.
Yeah.
But it's officially in Dogtown.
Yeah.
But part of the zoo, the expansion of the zoo area. Yes.
You have something that you mentioned to me. We don't have an image. The smallest city park in Dogtown.
Oh my God! It's 5 feet by 30 feet, and it's a war memorial to those from the neighborhood who gave the ultimate sacrifice in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Okay.
And it was officially designated a city park and then handed over for maintenance to the Dogtown Historical Society.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Again, something else that I didn't know. And one other thing, a boy and his dog sculpture?
Yes, again by Rudy Torini. And it gives a boy with a dog hence Dogtown, but that's not the real reason,
yes.
but it makes for a nice statue.
Yes, yes. And then you need someone to explain the real reason why it's called Dogtown.
Exactly.
So I want to move on to, you kind of, so it's interesting, you come from your family, the Hill, you do the Dogtown tour,
yes.
but you've also expanded to do something called the Bosnian
Yes,
Experience Tour.
the tour companies I deal with kept asking me, what else you got? What else you got? Well, I got a culinary. What else you have? I'm going to do a Bosnian neighborhood tour because there's a story to be told. It took me 6 months to research it, 6 months to get their confidence there. The Bosnians, there's over 60 to 70,000 Bosnian Americans, sometimes refugees, in the past, in the greater St. Louis area now. More than any other city in the world and country other than Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Right. We actually have a map. It sort of shows this is Bevo Mill.
The Bevo Mill, of course, it's in the Bevo Mill area.
Right. This is a population density map. And
yes.
so as you pointed out, the largest Bosnian community outside in the United States.
Outside of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I'm so proud of them. They have lived the American dream, coming here under these rough circumstances and getting some help from places like Oasis International and other self-help groups and the United States to come here and take over this neighborhood that was in decline and bring it back to life with stores and shops and coffee shops and everything else. And they have a tremendous work ethic and are very successful here in St. Louis.
So when we had the image of Bevo Mill, do you start the tour at Bevo Mill?
Well, I talk about Bevo Mill, of course, which is started. It was the German neighborhood, of course, St. John the Baptist Parish, if you will, Catholics there. And the Bevo Mill has now been repurchased. It was city-owned, as you know. Was repurchased this past year by a restaurateur and his wife, and they're refurbishing it as we speak with a grand opening in October for an Oktoberfest kind of grand opening. So check the Bevo Mill website, new website, just Google it, and you'll see what they have in store.
Yeah.
Built, of course, by the Anheuser-Busch hierarchy.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bevo Mill is always, it's
and it's going to be more beautiful than ever before.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. So tell us more about
the tour, the Bosnian tour. Of course, we talk about the history of the war back then, 20 years ago, how the refugees got here. A lot of horror stories, but now a lot of success stories. And I take you to a coffee shop that serves as a tavern in the afternoon and a disco on weekends. I take you to a Eastern European grocery store, to the bakery, to the old-fashioned butcher shop, to Gerbich restaurant, typically our Taft restaurant, which has the authentic Bosnian-type foods, and even to a mosque, because most of them coming here as refugees are Muslim. Yes.
And so when you talked about sort of earning the trust with the community to give these tours and sort of to be a voice, a spokesperson, if you will, I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it happens by, my example, by giving an example of the first few tours that I was not going to take advantage of them or the neighborhood. I was out there to tell their story. And now they have me with open arms. Yes.
And so did you meet and say, hey, these are some of the locations I want to go to and show?
I actually went to all possible locations and then talked to the people there and eventually began visiting there as well.
Well, let's see, you've covered Taft Restaurant. What's the Miniature Museum?
The Miniature Museum was there actually at the time before it became Bosnian, and it's always been there right across the street. It's the St. Louis Miniature Museum right across the street from the Bevo Mill, and it's a wonderful, neat place for kids and those who like little miniature homes, trains, cars, etc.
I think you've got the market, Taft Restaurant, Coco's on Gravois.
Coco's is the coffee shop I talked about.
Got it.
There's a Zlatic bakery. The Bosnian bread is almost as good as I better say it's just as good, otherwise the Bosnians, I'll be giving calls, are just as good as the Italian bread. Beautiful, delicious bread, delicious bread.
So do you think this is something that people, when they're visiting from out of town, that they should sort of reach out to you, or is this something
most of my clients are within a 150-mile radius of St. Louis, talking about 85% or so, and most of them belong to church groups, senior groups, school groups, Red Hat ladies, you name it, reunions, that kind of thing. And again, a percentage do come from out of town, but most are within the greater St. Louis, 150-mile radius of St. Louis.
And what do you find most people sort of their response in doing it? Is it sort of like me, oh, I didn't know this, or oh my gosh, I've been passing this for years and I never knew the story behind it?
Well, most tell me, for example, the Hill Tour, like, I've been coming to the Hill to eat for years, but I really wanted to find out what it's really all about,
Yes.
i.e. the Lombard Sicilian makeup or the Bosnian tour. What's really there? You know, what's their story? And so, yes, and I try to make it as realistic, truthful as possible.
And I know when we were speaking actually over the phone, you come up all the time with different themes as well. So it's not just, oh, the Hill, but you might do something, as you mentioned, like a culinary
The culinary
one, or even
tour.
for the haunted tour.
Yes, the haunted tour. I'm doing for Oasis, October 14th, the Mysteries of the Hill tour.
Yes.
I'm doing that as well. I've done Prohibition tours until the priest found out and I couldn't do it anymore.
So no Prohibition
No
tours?
more Prohibition tours.
Well, tell me at least
I
one.
can tell you
me
about
one
it.
stop on the Prohibition
Well,
tour.
the Prohibition tours, I can show you some false basements where all the stills were to make moonshine. They still have a lot of false basements in the neighborhood. It was a cottage industry during Prohibition of making moonshine, making a little extra money on the side. Nothing wrong with that, right? Of course not.
No, so people who currently live in these homes, this is still, you show them where these
Yeah,
false
where the
basements-
false basements were. Yes,
Very
yes.
cool.
Now many of them have made them into wine cellars.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
Wow. And so on if we were to do a haunted tour, let's say.
A haunted
where would
tour.
we stop on a haunted tour? St. Louis. There's a lot of haunted stops in a St. Louis tour, right?
I hate to say this, Monsignor Bomberito, but St. Ambrose Church has many very holy, good spirits there
Yes.
that come back to visit from time to time. And I've had a few experiences there
Yeah.
that I will tell about in my Mysteries of the Hill tour.
Yes, you have to do the tour to get the
Exactly.
scoop. I mean,
Exactly.
for you, for this stage in your life, how has it been? I mean, I imagine you're meeting a lot of people from all walks of life.
It
and-
has been wonderful. I have discovered in the last 10 years about 30 or 40 new cousins I wasn't aware of, for example, and various people from around the country who didn't realize Yogi Berra came from St. Louis, for example. I'm a Missouri School of Journalism graduate. I met the head of the School of Journalism for Northwestern University, gave him a private tour. I met a lady on a tour from the Hill originally. We didn't know she was there. She became a diva in New York City, a Copacabana girl, Latin Quarter girl, knew Frank Sinatra very well, was in movies.
Yeah.
And now she comes back all the time. Her stage name is Toni Carroll. And nobody knew she existed because she left when she was 18. So all these neat little things that you find out over a course of 10 years of meeting a lot of great people on the tours.
And before we were about to close, I want to mention that you are expanding. You have someone else who's joining your team? or
Yes,
you will be?
yes, I am. His name is Sam Martorelli. He lives on the Hill, good Sicilian boy, and he's going to be helping me next year and this year a little bit when I have just too many tours to do.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight, your
you're welcome.
historical knowledge. And if you at home would like to do a tour, reach out to Joe. We've got his information there for you on the screen. The phone number is 314-602-3359 or joe.de hillboy
Very
at
good.
gmail. That's very
good.
clever.
Yes.
At gmail.com, and you can do a tour of the Hill, Dogtown. You can go to Bevo Mill, Dutchtown, or do one of these haunted tours or culinary
specialty tours, yes.
specialty tours.
Yes.
But no, very fun. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you at home for watching. Please keep it here on STL TV. Experience St. Louis.